Hello and welcome, everyone. Um, Today, I have a very special guest that I was looking forward to meet for quite some time now, and I will let her introduce herself. But she is very known to be a Canadian university instructor, human rights activist, and author. She was forced to an abusive marriage from an someone from Al Qaeda operative, and I will let her introduce her own story and tell us about many, many things. Please help me to welcome Yasmine Mohammed. Yasmine,
Thank
how
you
are
so
you?
much. Good, good. Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
It is a
So,
privilege and an honor to have you here. Thank you so much. Uh,
to introduce myself, I guess I should say that I wrote a book called Unveiled, which goes through my life. And I'm the president and founder of an organization called Free Hearts, Free Minds, which I am very proud of. And I also work with many organizations like the Ayan Hirsi Ali Foundation or the Clarity Coalition, Atheists for Liberty, um, Center for Inquiry, the Richard Dawkins Foundation, et cetera, et cetera.
Amazing work. I am familiar a little bit with your work, but can you tell us a little bit about these foundations and what do they do and how they help people and what's your role in it?
Okay, sure. I forgot to mention Forgotten Feminists too, which is a talk I have, which is similar to this one that we're having right now, that I have with women who have overcome fundamentalist religions and who are now, empowering other women to find their freedom. So that is one of my favorite endeavors. And Free Hearts, Free Minds is an organization that I started back in 2017. It's the world's only not for profit that's dedicated to supporting the mental health of ex Muslims. So when I was going through my journey of, you know, religious trauma, of
Hmm.
overcoming the trauma of, because once you denounce Islam, you you not only go through a personal crisis of like, who am I then and what do I believe and all that stuff, but also your entire system of support, your family, your friends, your community, all of that stuff turns against you, not just disappears, but turns against you.
Absolutely.
So it's a very dark and difficult time to go through alone. So our organization supports people specifically that are living in Muslim majority countries where the punishment for this, you know, thought crime is execution. So I'm very proud to say that a lot of the people that we support at Free Hearts, Free Minds are coming from Egypt, which I absolutely love.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
For those for
and
those
Saudi Arabia.
who don't know, both Yasmin and I came from an Egyptian background. Just to throw it in.
Yeah, yeah. And the second demographic is from Saudi Arabia, so that's amazing. And then after that, it's everywhere. It's Afghanistan, it's Malaysia, it's Mauritania, it's all over the world.
Amazing.
So yeah, we're getting quite a few people these days from Afghanistan, as you can imagine. And yeah, so it's, people from Iran, for example, there's a lot of atheists or ex-Muslims in Iran, but because there's so many of them, they support each other. They have their own communities, so that's a really great place to denounce Islam. But
Totally.
in other countries, you're so alone, and you have to hide. And the second group of people that we help are the LGBT community, because of course they're also at risk of persecution or execution, and they also have to hide who they are. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, those are the two groups that we mainly support.
Right. So let me dig in straight away. I want to ask you. You mentioned your book Unveiled, and you mentioned a bit about your activism. Why Unveiled, and why do you do activism more? Let me put it the way that I often get accused while doing the work that I do. I often hear, "Why are you attacking Islam?" So I will pass on the question to you. Why are you attacking Islam, Yasmin?
Um, so it's interesting because I really don't care about Islam, believe it or not. I don't care to attack Islam. It's such a boring waste of time to sit there and try to prove. It's like trying to argue with somebody who believes in leprechauns or fairies, like it's a waste of time to sit there. You can't fight, somebody who is indoctrinated and who believes in such illogical things like flying donkeys with the face of a woman and the feathers of a peacock. Like, I'm not going to sit there and try and have a conversation with you and explain to you why this isn't real. It's a waste of my time. What I'm more interested in is the damage that Islam causes, the oppression that Islam causes, the persecution that Islam causes, the violence that Islam causes, the misogyny that Islam causes all over the world. That's what concerns me. So I'm worried about the people who are currently in the position that I was in, which is people who are being completely controlled and suffocated by this religion.
Right. But that obviously, in turn, creates a lot of attack on the work that you do. S-
Yeah.
do you get told that you're an Islamophobe, or
Oh.
I
Yeah,
guess,
but I mean,
yeah. What do you think of that term to start with? What do you think of Islamophobia?
well, it's a false term, of course. It was a term made up to try and, it's a form of blasphemy law, really is what it is. So in our
Mm.
countries, we have actual blasphemy laws that control people to silence them, to force them not to criticize the religion, or they're going to be imprisoned, or they're going to be killed, or they're going to be lashed in public, or they're going to be killed by their coworkers or by their like in the case of Michelle Khan in Pakistan, by his classmates, or even just by random people in the streets, like in the case of Avjit Roy in Bangladesh. Like, you're going to be in danger if you speak out against this religion anywhere in those countries. So over here in the free West, where they don't have any laws to control us, there is no top down control to make us shut our mouths. They created this bottom up control, which is the term Islamophobia. So it's a way to get useful idiots to use the term to try to silence others from criticizing this religion. And at the end of the day, the Islamists are happy because they're getting what they wanted, whether they're going to do it the way Pakistan and Saudi Arabia do it, or whether they're going to do it using this term. At the end of the day, nobody's criticizing Islam. People are too scared to criticize Islam. If you criticize Islam, you're going to end up like the Charlie Hebdo journalists. You're going to end up like Salman Rushdie. I mean, we had a very famous case that's currently happening right now in the United States where a history of art professor brought up a medieval art that was painted in Persia of Muhammad when he was receiving his, Iqra from Gabriel way at the beginning, like the first words of the Quran. And it's like this
Mhm.
painting that was created back then. And because it's a history of, as an art history course, they're studying one of the pieces of art that they have the option of studying is that piece of art. Now, they don't have to study it if they don't want to. They can study a different one. But just the fact that the professor had the audacity to bring up this
How dare him?
piece of art in class, yeah, that professor lost their job. And
Oh my
what's
god.
even worse is the president of the university, if you can believe this, yeah, Adam, I still can't even believe this happened in the United States of America. The professor of the university said, and I quote, "The feelings of the Muslim students should supersede academic freedom."
What the?
The
What?
president of the university. Yeah.
Are we
Can you
going back
imagine?
in time to the medieval times where the church had entire control and trying to silence the voice of science and
Yeah.
research and everything?
That's the term
Seriously,
Islamophobia. That's what it is successful in doing. Yeah.
seriously, what the heck? But on that, I still want to ask you something because you mentioned the LGBTQ community before. So I believe that we both stand for diversity and inclusion. So, where is diversity and inclusion when it comes to the Muslim people? Because I also don't think that it is quite a solution to just expose Islam and shun the Muslim people and tell them that you believe in stupid things. Uh, Where is the sweet? Where do you draw the line between Islamophobia on one
Yeah.
side or blasphemy and on the other side, diversity and inclusion and embracing Muslim people who are willing to, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. What's your thought on this?
That's a really great point, Adam, and that's a really important point that people treat Islam and Muslims as this monolithic group. They think that first and foremost, they think we're all Arabs. When I say 10 to 15% of Muslims are only 10 to 15% of Muslims are Arab, they're shocked. They think that every Arab is Muslim and every Muslim is Arab. And I'm like, there's a lot of Arabs that aren't Muslim. They're like, what? They just think it's an ethnicity, right?
Just for the
So
record, I
you,
came from a Coptic Christian background, so just for
Yeah,
anyone
and you're
listening,
Egyptian, just like
a,
me. So we
a
share the
classic
same
example.
ethnicity, but we didn't grow up in the same religion. Yeah, exactly. So it's a religion just like any other religion. It's an ideology. They don't do the same confusion doesn't happen when you talk about like Catholics, for example. They're not going to think that Mexicans are the same as Italians, like they understand, that you can be different cultures, different languages, different ethnicities, different everything, but share a religion. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. We don't talk about the diversity amongst Muslims. Now, one of the groups that I mentioned at the top of this show is Clarity, the Clarity Coalition. And that coalition is a group of Muslims and ex Muslims who have gotten together to support each other because we have a common cause. We're both looking, they are looking to bring Islam into this century. And I completely support them in that endeavor. I'm not interested in working towards that goal because I've decided I want nothing to do with the religion. I don't want it to be a part of my life. I'm not interested in spending my energy in that way. However, I completely and 100% support them because we have the same goals. So if we look at Imam Hassan Shalgumi from France, for example, his family is in hiding now because he dared to speak up against anti-Semitism in his mosque in France. So, or if we look at Seyran Atish, who is a woman in Berlin who started a mosque where it's an LGBT friendly mosque. She has 24-hour, 7-day security from the German government, not just at her mosque, but in her house as well. So these
Oh
are
my
people who are
goodness.
still Muslim. Yeah, they're still Muslim. They still believe in Islam, but they're trying to progress the religion. And they are dealing with just as much hate and attacks and death threats and fear as the rest of us. Anybody who speaks out, anybody who criticizes in the most minor way is going to suffer consequences. I mean, this professor that I mentioned to you wasn't even criticizing Islam. She was just showing a piece of art in an art history class, and for that she loses her job. So there's such a fear, there's such a culture of fear around speaking up against this religion, of this ideology that can harm so many people. So yes, I absolutely stand side to side, toe to toe with Muslim reformers who are trying to bring their religion into this century. But like I said, this is their fight, not my fight, but
Mhm.
I completely support them.
I love what you said, and it's something I personally struggle with, and I will explain why in a second. So I love to work with Muslim reformers or moderate Muslims who can find the sweet spot between having some form of belief, but at the same time being able to blend in the Western culture and embrace our values. And as you said, there is this mosque now accepting the LGBT community, but here's the problem that I'm facing. Often when I do this kind of work, and I believe you face the same, you hear those statements. You misunderstand Islam. That is not true Islam. You're using the straw man fallacy. That led me to struggle to find the difference or to know the difference between those who are true reformers at heart and those who are just willing to defend Islam and telling it. So, for instance, if I go and say, well, you are actually prosecuting, you're killing gay people in Egypt and in other Arab countries. They're like, oh, but that's wrong. We shouldn't kill nobody, and you misunderstand Islam. How do
Mhm.
you tell if this is a genuine person really against killing gay people, for instance, and this is just an example, or he or she is an actual Muslim reformer who truly believe that yes, we shouldn't kill gay people, because they both say the same thing, but not necessarily coming from the same intention. Do you have any
Yes.
thought on this?
Yes. So the first group of people that you mentioned, the dishonest group that will say, "Oh, you're just misunderstanding Islam. It's actually a really cute and lovable and feminist religion." I don't work with those people. I'm not. I don't have the time, energy. I cannot. It has to be an honest person. It has to
Right.
be somebody who says, "Yes, absolutely." It says "adrabuhunna" right there in verse in chapter 4, verse 34. Or the people that tell you that the hur, the sex dolls in heaven, that they're actually grapes, that they're not women. Like they're
This is the
described in the
most
hadith.
ridiculous.
Oh my God. They're described in detail, their breasts, their eyes, their skin, but how
How long you can have
suddenly we're
sex
talking
with
about
them, and
grapes. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Their bodily fluids, like there's such detail described, but then suddenly they can manipulate this and say, no, 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 it's grapes. These men are killing themselves for grapes. I can't deal with people like that. I can't deal with people who are dishonest. So
Right.
at the Clarity Coalition, we only work with the second group of Muslim reformers that you mentioned. And to be honest, I wouldn't even call the first group reformers. I would call them apologists. And
Mhm.
there are a lot of apologists. And they're the ones that are living in this state of denial, of cognitive dissonance. They're unwilling to accept the reality in front of them. They can tell you you're misunderstanding Sharia, but what about the 15 Muslim majority countries who have it in their laws to execute people who are gay? You're trying to tell
They
me,
misunderstand Sharia.
yeah, exactly. The lawmakers, the Sharia lawmakers, and these governments, they misunderstand Sharia. Like, don't talk to me about it. Don't talk to Adam Elmasri about it. Go talk to them about it. If you think they misunderstood your religion, then go clarify it to them. You know, but they're too busy trying to make excuses for Islam and trying to cover for Islam, that they're not actually concerned about dealing with the problems. So
Mhm.
I'll give you another example. When we talk about what's happening in Afghanistan, they say, "Oh, that's not real Islam." What's happening in Iran? That's not real Islam. What's happening in Pakistan? That's not real Islam. All of these countries have the word Islam in their names. It's the Islamic Caliphate of Pakistan, of Afghanistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and so forget the
But these
real
are
Islam.
corrupt.
Let's
These are corrupt
Yeah.
government, Yasmin. These are
At the
not
end of
true
the day,
Muslims.
that's the true Islam. That's the real Islam. That
Okay,
is the reality of Islam.
agreed.
So forget this, intellectual endeavor where we try to figure out what is the true Islam, what is the real Islam. Let's look at the reality of Islam, and let's start there. And if you can't accept the reality, if you can't see how this religion persecutes men, women, children, minority groups, then I can't have a conversation with you, because you're somebody who is unwilling to accept reality.
Completely agreed. I cannot agree any more, to be honest. But it seems like you can spot the difference straight away between those who are really genuine in reforming and those who are just making apologetics response. I can see that to a great extent with clear cut topics, like, for instance, this Hur al Ain example, or killing gay people. There are clear topics, and I can pull million hadith or verses that will show that this is true Islam and this is true Sharia. But what about the gray areas? In your book and in several interviews, you often talk about FGM, female genital mutilation. Um, Now, I did a video about that as well in Arabic, and some people will come and claim that FGM is actually a cultural practice. You can even see it in many African countries that they don't even embrace Islam, but they still practice FGM. What do you say if someone tells you, why are you accusing Islam of female genital mutilation? We have nothing in Hadith or nothing in Islam that
Mhm.
dictates FGM.
Okay. So, first and foremost, there are four schools of thought, as you know. Out of those four schools of thought, three of them say that FGM is mandatory. And one of the schools of thought says that it's recommended. So, to say that it has nothing to do with Islam is just a bold faced lie. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is, again, like we said before, Islam is not a monolith. So there are different people in Pakistan practice Islam differently than people in Saudi Arabia, or people in Afghanistan are practicing it differently than people in Egypt. So there are going to be slight cultural differences between Muslims and how they practice their religions because they come from different cultures. They are different
Mhm.
people and they have different histories and so yes, it's true that FGM is more prevalent in some countries than in other countries. That's absolutely correct. And it is also, you can find it being practiced by people of other religious beliefs, not only by Muslims. That's true as well. But none of that is, when people tell you FGM has nothing to do with Islam, they are more concerned about defending the religion of Islam rather than defending these little girls who are getting their clitoris cut off with razor blades. That's the key issue here, is those people don't care about FGM and they don't care about these girls and they don't care about the problem and how prevalent it is and how we have to fight it and how we have to educate or prosecute against it. Their concern is to pretend that it has nothing to do with Islam. Again, it's a lie. It has to do with Islam. You have to accept it. That's the first step, right? Denial isn't just a river in Egypt. You have to accept first that this is the truth, and then we can move forward from there. So yeah, that it's everything you said is true, but it's also true that it is a part of Islam.
Completely agree. And there's something, this topic in particular is very dear to me, and the reason is my mom personally suffered from FGM. She is one of five sisters, and they all except one experienced FGM growing up. And this is one of the dangers of background Islam. So we grew up in a Muslim country. They grew up in a very humble areas and humble. Her parents, well, my grandparents weren't uh, well educated, so when something is very much endorsed by the culture and by the religion in a majority Muslim country, it seems to have found its way to seep into the Coptic communities. Even the Christians in Egypt, they do practice FGM, um, and yeah, and I do talk about this a lot, and people don't get the relation between, well, you're coming from a Christian background, so why are you attacking Islam? Because it was the fact that I grew up in a Muslim country that this seeped into a culture that didn't even embrace FGM to start with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's interesting that they would ask you that because as a minority group in Egypt, you suffered specific persecutions. It's like asking a black
hell
person in
yeah.
America, why are you fighting against racism in America? You know what I mean? It's a stupid question. Like I was just speaking to in my where I mentioned I have this podcast called Forgotten Feminists. I had an author on named Lena, and she was talking about how when she grew up as a Christian in Egypt, she was 10 years old and she was sitting in her house, and the Friday khutbah comes on. You know how it comes from like every loudspeaker, and
Yep.
you can't escape it. And in the khutbah, of course, they're talking about يلعن اليهود والنصارى والكفار والwhatever. And she's sitting in her house a 10-year-old girl in her home. She can't even feel safe in her home because there's a loudspeaker cursing her and her family and everybody that she loves and her community. And so, of course, she was terrified. And still now, as an adult woman, that was like a traumatic experience for her. She went running to her mother and she said, "Are we safe? Are we okay?" You know, that's the
Okay.
kind of thing that you have to think if when people ask you, why are you speaking up against it? Just like I was persecuted by Islam, you were persecuted by Islam. And this is something that people, you know, we don't hear enough of your voices. I also had an Iraqi Christian woman who was also on my show, and she also talked about that. And she also talked about how her father was thrown out of the country for criticizing um, the culture as well.
Oh my
And
God.
her and her family had to run in the middle of the night. You know, I have so many stories. I'm going to tell you another one about Gad Saad, who grew up Lebanese, Jewish in Lebanon, and being whatever he was, 5, 6 years old, sitting in his classroom, and the teacher goes around asking people, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And his friend that he just finished playing with at recess time pops up and he says, "I want to kill Yahud. I want to kill Jewish people." And here he is, a little boy, a Jewish boy. His friend just said, "I want to kill Jewish people."
Oh my God.
You know, imagine that. Imagine, and he didn't, as opposed to Lena, who was at home, he was at school, so he didn't even have his mother to run to right away. So of course he was. You can just imagine what that would feel like for a little kid. You know, that is childhood trauma right there.
Absolutely.
Um, and it's embarrassing, it's disgusting, it's sad, it's very, very, you know, angering to hear these stories, because what are we mostly hearing? Islam is a religion of peace, Islam is a religion of love, Islam is so diverse, Islam is so feminist. So these are all lies, and I want the truth of these communities to come out. But of course, as you know, the Christians in Egypt are such a small minority. The Jews in Lebanon are gone. You know, the Jews
Yeah.
in Yemen are gone. The Jews in Iraq are gone. The Jews in all of these Arab countries are gone.
Almost
And
in
the
Egypt
Christians
as
are
well.
not far behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Egypt, you have like a handful of Jews left, only women.
True.
Um, and they're going to die off soon.
Yeah.
And then you'll have none. And this is a country that had hundreds of thousands of Jewish people. And the dirty secret is, what did Egyptians do? When the state of Israel formed, they told the Jewish people, any man between the age of 16 and 65, any Jewish man between the age of 16 and 65 has the choice to either leave this country and go to your homeland of Israel or go to prison indefinitely. So of course they're all going to go. And if all the men leave, then who are the women gonna, you know, it's easy. The women they know are gonna follow their husbands or their fathers or their brothers or their families or whatever. And the few
Or
single women that could
yay,
stay,
concubines. Malakat Yamin. Yay. Yeah.
that's
Do you want to
another
say
one that they
something
try
about
to
Malakat
pretend.
Yamin?
Well, that's another thing that they try to pretend doesn't exist. And again, it's in the Quran. It's been talked about so many times. I mean, I don't even know how many times it's mentioned in the Quran. So many times. And you can see with ISIS, what did they do? They started buying and selling Yazidi women
Mhm.
like as if they are things. They followed their prophet impeccably. When he conquered tribes, he would take the boys and pull down their pants, and the ones that had pubic hair would be killed because they're already too big to be brainwashed. The younger ones that didn't have pubic hair, he would take them and brainwash them into becoming Muslim soldiers. And the women, the wives, the daughters, they all got sold off to his. He chose the women that he wanted to choose, and then the rest of them got sent around to his companions or sold off. Same thing. ISIS did the exact same thing. People want to pretend that has nothing to do with Islam. Look at the history of Islam. Just look at the history and see how it follows it step by step. There's no deviation. The leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi, had a PhD fucking D in Islamic studies. So he very much understood the religion. A PhD in Islamic studies. That's the leader of ISIS. So try and tell me after that it has nothing to do with
So
Islam.
don't tell me ISIS doesn't represent Islam. Yeah,
Absolutely.
this is the best representation of Islam from someone who PhD himself.
Yes.
Yeah. It's actually my most recent video about violence in Islam, and whenever someone tells me Islam is a religion of peace, and you misunderstand Malakat al Yamin. By the way, for those who don't understand Arabic, Malakat al Yamin literally means those who you own with your mighty hands. That's literally Malakat Yamin. That's what it means. And I was explaining the Islamic history of how right after the prophet's death, even the prophet's cousin and the prophet's wife, they waged wars on each other, Ali and Aisha. Um, so who you're trying to fool when you say, well, ISIS doesn't represent Islam, it's a religion of peace. I mean, the prophet's family, for God's sake, waged wars on each
Immediately.
other.
Yeah. His body was still warm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, here's a little bit of a deviation, but I want to pick your brains on this. We talk a lot about Islam and the atrocities practiced and whether they are representing true Islam or not. Some people then come and accuse us that we turn a blind eye to all the other atrocities that are. So the argument goes something like this: there are many other atrocities that were committed against humanity in the name of liberalism and Darwinism and atheism and every ism at the end. Why do you choose to criticize Islam only and turn a blind eye to all other atrocities? Shouldn't you love all humanity at large, or all good causes equally? What do you think of that? Why are we so focused on Islam?
I'm focused on Islam because it is the religion that traumatized me. It is the religion that oppressed me. And so I feel most empathetic to the people who are being traumatized and being oppressed by this religion of Islam. So what's important to note is those people who tell you, why are you focusing on Islam? Why don't you focus over there? Those are people that just want to say, like, look over here, look over here. Don't look over there. Stop looking at Islam. Look at this. They're just trying to divert your attention. That's really what it comes down to. It's not that they care about all of these topics equally, because that's unrealistic. Nobody can care about all the topics equally. There's so many topics. There's so many atrocities. There's so many things to get upset about. There's so many things that we could be focusing our energy to try and fight and make better. No one human being is going to have the bandwidth to take up all of these causes, and to try to expect one human being to have the bandwidth to take up all of these causes equally is just, it's just dishonesty, is just stupidity, is just something that they have to say because they don't want you to look at Islam anymore. Okay, so it's not even from a place of caring about other people or whatever. It's from a place of trying to defend their religion from any kind of criticism. So, they do the same thing to me. Why don't you talk about other religions? Because other religions didn't do anything to me. That's why. There's more than enough people out there. You can find ex-Scientologists or ex-Jehovah's Witness or ex-Mormons or people that were persecuted by their religions, ex-Hasidic Jews, ex-Orthodox Jews. They can talk about it because that's their experience and that's their life. And they have every right to speak up against the thing that harmed them. And I have every right to speak up against the thing that harmed me as well. And that's what I choose to do.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. There's this beautiful documentary on, sorry, not documentary, show on Netflix that talks about ultra Orthodox Jews called Unorthodox. I'm not sure if you watched
Yes,
it. It's
I did.
brilliant. So it's actually a denial. If you think that the attack is only on Islam, that in itself is ignorance, because everyone who suffered from a particular religion or a particular background have the right to criticize that particular background that they suffered from. That's one thing, but also everything is relevant to the time and date that we're living in. And if you look around the world
Mhm,
today, what religion
mhm,
is causing
mhm.
the biggest mess around? It, it would be like when the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and someone comes and says, "Why aren't you making vaccines for flu, or why aren't you focusing on um, like there's a bloody pandemic
What about
here?"
smallpox? Why aren't you talking about smallpox?
Exactly. Isn't
Yeah,
it as
yeah,
dangerous? Well,
yeah.
so
Exactly.
yeah.
Absolutely correct. And although I have complete respect and support for anybody who speaks up against any ideology that hurt them, I completely agree with what you're saying. At the end of the day, Jews are 0.2% of the population, right? Muslims are almost a quarter of the planet. You know, they rule over 50 countries. So this is, you know, this is a huge global problem. It's the second largest religion on the planet. People like to talk about it like it's this little minority group. No, it's not a little minority group. It's the second largest religion on the planet. And they have a lot of political power and they have a lot of petrodollars. And like I said, there are a lot of over 50 countries that have Sharia in their laws. So this is a very big problem. Like you said, exactly at this point in history, this is the religion that is causing the most damage across the world. And again, if you want to talk about Christianity, they'll be like, but some women in South America can't get divorced. It's like, yes, and there are many women fighting against that. You know, oh, but some women in America can't get an abortion. Yes, but they are fighting against that. Do you know what I mean? Like these are causes or problems or whatever that they are being fought. But whenever we try to talk about anything that has anything to do with Islam, we want to talk about the child marriage. We want to talk about the FGM. We want to talk about women being beaten by their husbands or raped by their husbands. Any of these issues, even showing a freaking painting in a classroom, immediately Islamophobia. So we can't talk. We can't fight these problems because of these idiots that are trying to silence us with this term Islamophobia, or worse, the violent Islamists that are trying to silence us with their guns and bullets and knives. So the people that are fighting against these other religions that may be causing them, maybe restricting their lives or oppressing them in some way, those people are free to fight. Nobody's stopping them. Nobody's saying Christianophobia.
Totally. You know, that reminds me of when Black Lives Matters happened in America, that movement, and obviously for ages, for centuries, Black people were struggling and suffering and being persecuted and unjustly being killed in the States and elsewhere. So when finally some people made a movement and it became the Black Lives Matter, all of a sudden you find this other all lives matter. Well, we
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
all lives matter.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is it?
Perfect example, Adam. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about white lives now? Like,
Yeah.
is there any comparison between white people and Black people when it comes to suffering from unjustly killing? Yeah, it drives me crazy.
Exactly, and I absolutely agree with you, and that's what I actually have used a similar argument to that when people come and they say, "But what about Christianity?" And I say to them, "You're all lives mattering this topic." Like when we're specifically talking about the persecution that happens at the hands of, you know, because of Islam, people have to run in all the time and say, "What about Christianity? 200 years ago they did this. Didn't you
You just said
know?"
it 200 years ago.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. 500
Oh,
years ago in Ireland, they did this. Like, I don't fucking care. I'm talking about what's happening today. See, it's not, to me, those people are so dishonest. And it sickens me because they don't care about the people that we're talking about. They don't care about the topic that we're talking about. They just care to deflect
exactly.
and deny and protect Islam. That's their number one. I have to tell you, I watched a video with an Islamic convert woman from America wearing a niqab, and she has this YouTube channel. And she, after Masa Amini was killed in Iran, of course, you know that the women of Iran started burning their hijabs in the streets as a sign of protest against this thing that they're forced to wear, and that got this young girl killed. She's not the only young girl that was killed. There's many more, but this was the case that made international news. This American convert woman in niqab made a YouTube video where she said, "Stop burning hijabs. You're insulting Islam when you burn hijabs. I know Masa Amini was killed and that's horrible, but what you're doing is worse.
What? Excuse me?
What you're doing is worse." Yeah. That's brainwashed people. They truly believe that insulting the religion of Islam by burning this piece of cloth that has caused nothing but death and destruction and persecution for millions of women, by burning that piece of cloth, insulting Islam is worse than a human life, than a young woman being beaten to death. They really, truly do believe that it's worse. And that's why you will see the Charlie Hebdo journalists, they killed 12 people. They took 12 lives. They murdered 12 people. Their mothers, their fathers, their uncles, their brothers, their children are all lost now without that person that they love because of a cartoon, because of a drawing. It shows you how cheap human lives are for them in comparison to defending their religion.
Totally. Well, what do you expect from a religion that has the statement "Fadaka abi wa ummi ya Rasulallah"? For those who don't understand Arabic,
Exactly.
it says even my mom and dad are worth a sacrifice to you, O Prophet of Allah. So if you don't value the life of your most beloved and dearest people, if you don't value your very own blood, what do you think of a caricature artist or this person
Yeah.
of that or that person? Of course, their blood is halal, and of course you can kill them in a blink.
Yeah. And their
Um,
children too. You know how common honor violence and honor killings are, how easily they
Absolutely,
kill their daughters as well.
totally. That it's a random, a bit of a random question, but it comes to my mind. So when we talk about a killing and Masa Amini, sorry, honor killing and Masa Amini and the hijab issue, do you think that women are suffering more than men in Islam, or is the suffering equal? I'm talking about men and women coming from a Muslim background. Um, do you think men and women are equal in this scenario?
No, absolutely not. This Islam is a religion made by men for men. And so even if you are a Muslim man, you do not suffer in the same way that a Muslim woman suffers. Of course you suffer because you know your freedom of thought is being restricted, um, and so many other things as well. You're being indoctrinated with lies, you know, lots of other reasons why you're being um, you know, you're suffering needlessly. But women, that's a completely different story, right? Like, you know, the the Prophet of Islam has a hadith where he says that women are less intelligent than men, where he
Mhm.
says that women are the property of their husbands, and then they have to, when he wants to have sex with her, she has to give it to him, even if she's on top of a camel, or the angels will curse her all night. So
Mhm.
basically, endorsing marital rape. We talk about buying and selling women as if they are these things. We talk about how women must endure their husbands beating them because that's what Allah said. So you can't argue against him.
And
You
after
know,
all that, they're
women.
أكثر أهل النار. They're the
Exactly. That's another
absolutely
one. Yes.
women are the majority population in hell. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. 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 So it's an incredibly viciously misogynist religion, and it socializes and raises Muslim boys to be misogynist pigs as well. And they're up to the challenge, because why wouldn't they be, right? This religion gives them superiority. الرجال قوامون على النساء. What
Of
kind
course.
of a 13, 14-year-old boy full of testosterone and aggression isn't going to love that kind of shit, right? Of course, there will be ones that will grow out of it and will
Yeah.
say, okay, I don't like this anymore. This is wrong. Why is my mother suffering? Why is my sister suffering? Maybe some of them, it will, reach their hearts. But they are not the ones suffering the way we are, right? They're the leaders they are the persecutors in
Hmm.
this scenario. And even when men leave Islam, it's a long deprogramming process for them to recognize how much latent misogyny is just
Yeah.
coursing through their veins. They may curse Allah and curse Muhammad and have nothing to do with any of the beliefs of Islam, but you better believe that sexism stays, right? Because
Yes.
it serves them. It serves them. And it's insidious, it stays there for a long time. And unless they're going to do the work that is necessary to deprogram it and to humble themselves and to recognize all of these toxic ideas that they've been taught, it's just going to stay there. So yeah, no, my heart goes out to anybody who is indoctrinated in Islam, of course, because you were never given a chance to be free. You were never given a chance to be truly you. You don't even know who your authentic self is. You were always given a playbook and told, this is the book, you have to follow this, you have to do this. And so those people never get an opportunity to be who they truly are. But to compare the way women live as Muslims and the way men live, oh my God, apples and oranges, absolutely chalk and cheese. It's two completely different situations.
Agreed. It used to blow my mind when I talk to ex-Muslim men, and they're completely over the religion. And as you said, they are still so sexist, and they're still consumed by women's sexuality, and a woman should do that or should not do that. I'm like, where is this coming from? But as you said, if they're not willing to do the work at a much deeper level, more than just leaving the religion,
Mhm.
then yeah, you need to dismantle which actually, it's a side question. Through your charities and organization and support groups, do you have something for men to kind of re-educate or reintroduce yourself to a secular world? So now that I left the religion, now what
Yeah,
what do I do now? How do I deal with the world? How to
yeah.
bring up my kids without religion, without this is haram and this is halal? Do you do that? Can you please
That's the
tell us?
that's the first session. The first
Ah,
session is
thank you.
called identity. Yeah, yeah, because it's called identity, and it's all about identity, because that is the lie that we were told, is that we are Muslims. We were taught to believe that it's almost like an immutable characteristic. So the fact
Yeah,
that I am a Muslim is equal to the fact that I am a woman, equal to the fact that I have brown eyes. You know what I mean? And so
part of my nature, kind
when,
of.
yes, exactly. And so when you denounce this religion, when you have that moment where you realize, I don't believe in this religion and I don't want to be a part of it anymore, and it's all a bunch of lies, and you feel this like immense anger, first of all, that you've been lied to for so long, that you wasted so much of your life on stupid lies. um, and then you kind of find yourself in this very terrifying space of, who am I?
Mm.
So who am I then? And it's terrifying, but it's also really exciting. And I can say that now because it's it's 15 years in my past. But
Once
it
you're out of the
really,
bottleneck.
yes, yeah, it was a really scary time, but it's exciting because you get to be who you want to be. You get to choose, who is the person that I want to be? What is important to me? And then you get to build yourself up brick by brick. And you get to decide those bricks, which is amazing because when you're born and raised Muslim, you don't get to decide what clothes you wear. You don't get to decide how to eat your food. You don't get to decide how to go to the bathroom. You don't get to decide how to cut your toenails, you know? And so when you all of a sudden get to decide, who am I? What do I believe? What are my values? What's important to me? Who's the person that I want to become? I mean, that is such a gift. To have that kind of freedom is such a gift. It's a terrifying gift because there's so many choices and you have to do your homework very well and you have to be very careful. And it's not a quick process, it's a very slow process. So for me, I based that person on, because I had a daughter at the time, I had a toddler. And I've wanted to become a woman that would be a role model for her. I wanted to become somebody that she could look up to. So every time I picked up a brick and I tried to determine if I want this to become who I am, I would think to myself, is this somebody who I want my daughter to look to and be proud of? And so everybody has their own process of determining who they want to be and who they want to, who they want to become now is their own process. But that was my process that I talked about a little bit in my book.
Fair enough. And for anyone who is interested in this type of programs and support that Yasmine provides, I will add all the links in the description under the video. I already got the links from Yasmine, and I will put them under the description. Now that we're coming closer to the hour, I don't want to keep you for much longer, but I have one
That's
last.
okay.
Sorry,
Hold
go
on
ahead.
to your question because I
All right.
wanted to make one more addition too about this men versus women thing. Another important point is that men can hide,
Right. Okay.
right? Men can hide. So men can still live their lives. They can still go out drinking, they can still have girlfriends, they can still do whatever they want to do because they do not wear something on their head that says, I am Muslim, right? And so, and even if they did, you know, because it's such a sexist religion,
Mhm.
it allows men to be able to do these things. And it's like, yalla ma'alish, it's okay, you know, like he's forgiven for it. But if a girl does these kinds of things, oh, she's dishonored the whole family and now she needs to be killed and blah, blah, blah. So, so when I think about myself and my brother being raised in Canada, he could just hide. He could just live his life and do whatever he wanted to do. And um, there was nothing stopping him, you know?
You wouldn't
But
be
as
able
a
to do the
girl,
same in Canada?
no, of course not. I wouldn't even be allowed to leave the house, first of all. My brother was allowed to leave the house and go out whenever he wanted to. I wasn't even, as soon as school was over, within a few minutes, I had to be home. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't even want to guess what would happen to me if I ever didn't make it home. Um, so it's very different rules. It's very different rules for boys and girls. But the fact that men can hide the way that they don't visibly look Muslim, you know,
Mhm.
there's no physical
Yeah.
characteristic for Muslim. There's the cloth, the hijab that's forced on a woman's head that makes her look Muslim. And, you know, so that restricts her in so many ways. I just thought of this video that happened in the UK a few years ago where there was a busker in the street making music, and this hijabi girl, for once in her life, decided to enjoy a moment of peace and tranquility, and she started to dance to the singer in the street. And some fucking asshole Muslim guy records her on his phone, posts it on YouTube, and starts talking about how she's dishonoring the entire Muslim ummah because she
Oh,
decided to
no.
dance for 5 seconds of her pathetic life. You know, like it's just they're so restricted and controlled and policed by everybody around them, even people who don't even know them. Whereas that doesn't happen for men.
Because you're wearing it on your forehead like I'm a
You got
Muslim and
it.
I'm not allowed to. So it's an awful. Yeah. Yeah, I never looked at it from that perspective. The hiding or the idea that you're basically labeled on your forehead and subject to judgment in every breath you take, while men don't have that.
Nope. They can blend in. When people meet you, they're meeting Adam. They get to know you as an individual and learn about you. But when they're meeting me when I was wearing hijab, they don't get to know me because
Mhm.
immediately I've already put myself in this context, and they are just seeing Muslim girl, like you said, a big neon sign on your forehead. And so that already, it's like there's so many hoops that I have to overcome in order to get people to see who I am under this,
Right.
I don't get the freedom of people getting to know me. Who is this girl? No, they're getting to know who's this Muslim girl. And they already have all of these judgments and preconceived biases of whatever they believe a Muslim hijabi girl is.
How awful. And you're, in a way, you're double judged, not just judged, but because as a Muslim girl, when you approach, let's say, a group of men, or a group of people at work, now those who are actually Muslim will look at you. How are you going to behave? Are you going to behave as a Muslim? Are you going to shake hands? Are you going to,
Yes.
I don't know, kiss this guy on the cheek? Or outrageous. Every move you take is calculated from
Yep.
those who are coming from a Muslim background, but at the same time, all these non-religious people, or white people, they also look at you. She's Muslim. Is she gonna shake my hand? Oh my God, she's a radical. Of course, she cannot
Yep.
shake my hands because she's brainwashed. So you're in a lose-lose situation in both cases. You're like, and that's
Hmm.
simply because you're wearing this neon sign,
Yep.
as you said. How
Constantly
awful.
navigating these spaces, and at no point do you get to be your authentic self.
Total. How can you?
You don't even know who your authentic self is, because you're so busy being an ambassador for Islam to the non-Muslims. You have to be a perfect example of Muslim girl to the non-Muslims so that you can, continue with this lie and this propaganda that Islam is a religion of peace. You have to make sure that they see you only as a peaceful, loving person. And then with the Muslims, you have to make sure that you follow the Islam to the letter. Otherwise, you're a whore and a dishonor to your family, and blah blah blah. So and at no point do you ever get to sit back and say, "Do I want to shake his hand or not? Do I even want to wear this hijab on my head or not? Do I feel like dancing in the street or not?" You never get to ask yourself those questions because you don't exist. You are just a thing that is being used in whatever scenario. Yeah.
No wonder in this, the religious trauma, after you leave the religion, you have no sense of identity whatsoever. Who am I? As you said earlier,
Yeah.
now that I don't wear the hijab, now that I took off the hijab, who the hell am I? And how am
Yes.
I supposed to behave from this point onward? Should I shake hands or not?
Yeah.
It-
It is honestly like being like it strips you of your independence entirely. Like I know visually, obviously, when you see a bunch of women in hijab, there's no differentiation between them. They all look the same. And it does that to you internally as well. It strips you of your individuality. And even to say it strips you of your individuality isn't even true enough because the truth is your individuality never has an opportunity to even flourish. Who you are never even gets to become. You are
yeah.
from the beginning, this shit is put on you and you are a thing. Every part of Islam treats women as a thing. And when you become a thing that looks like all these other things, you can just imagine when you try to step away from this school of fish or this flock of birds and try to walk in your own direction, exactly like you said, how there are we could spend, it would bore most people, but those of us who used to wear hijab, we could spend hours just talking about just the trauma of
Yeah.
walking in the streets without a hijab on for the first time, like just that first day, and just feeling all of the different feelings and all of the different thoughts and all of the different experiences that you go through when you take this off, and then figuring out how to wear clothes, because I used to wear abaya all the time. So I didn't even
Mm.
know, like, how do I match my clothes? You know, do I like skirts? Do I like pants? Do I like dresses? You know,
And
there's so much shit around that.
to add more to that, Yasmin, because from a Coptic Christian background, growing up in Egypt, not only the Muslim women that suffer from that perspective, but even the Christian women who go out on the street and they're not wearing hijab, or just wearing, even if they're wearing very modestly, they are still looked at. Oh, so as a woman, you feel judged either way, whether you are
Mm-hmm.
from a Muslim background or from a non-Muslim background. You're still
Mm-hmm.
being judged for wearing or not wearing. It's like it's
Yes, you're absolutely correct. But the element of choosing what you want to wear and dealing with whatever judgment comes from that,
true.
there's that's a huge element in this. If I choose to be goth and dress myself all in black and wear thick black eyeliner and dye my hair dark black, I know that some people are going to judge me for that, and I don't give a fuck, because this is what I want to wear. This is
Yeah,
how I want to portray myself to the world. This is what makes me happy, you
yeah.
know. So one of the ways that I used to describe it to my friends in high school is I would say, like, imagine if you were a goth person, but you were forced to wear a pink tutu and you're forced to wear glitter. You know how repulsed you would feel by that, because people do ask the question, what's the big deal? It's just a piece of cloth on your head. You know, like, they don't understand that that's the tip of the iceberg.
Hmm.
You're not even allowed personal autonomy over your own body. You're not allowed bodily autonomy. It's literally handcuffs restricting you. And that's it. Like I said, it's just the first step. You know, if they can control what goes on your head, they can control what goes in your head. That's what it's all about. It's all about control. And this is why they make such a big deal when women remove their hijabs. This is why I have that whole free from hijab movement. The reason why they hate it so much, and there's so much backlash against a woman who chooses to take off her hijab, is because what she's saying is, I refuse your chains. I'm saying no to this control that you are trying to control me with. I want to be my own woman. I want to free my own head. And they can't handle that. Women need to be controlled. Women need to remain subservient. And so it's what you're saying is true. Yes, all women are judged all the time. All humans are judged all men are judged all the time. If a man decides to grow a bushy beard, or to shave his face, or to, you know, wear a t-shirt, or to wear a suit, or we all judge. We're human beings, we all judge. But each one of us should have the freedom to be able to wear and do whatever we want to do, because if we have the freedom to wear and do whatever we want to do, then we don't care about the judgments, because
Totally.
we're happy.
And to clarify my point, to be honest, I wasn't trying to make them both look equal, because yes, the element of choice, freedom of choice in itself makes a big, huge difference between the two. But all I'm saying is that in a Muslim country, you're judged either way,
Yeah, yeah,
whether you choose or not. In a Muslim country, you suffer even if you're not a Muslim woman. So that
yeah,
is one thing. And
yeah.
and
And
sorry, go
Christian
ahead.
women were getting their hair cut in the metro, weren't they? Because there was a time, yeah, a
Yeah,
few years
someone
ago, where
sneaks
they
with a
were
scissor. Yeah.
cutting the
And a
hair of any woman who dares to have her hair out in Egypt. And a lot of those women that ended up getting attacked were Christian women. Like, they don't
Totally,
even, you know, why should they have to wear a hijab? They shouldn't. But when you're living
because
in a
you're in a
Muslim
Muslim
majority
country.
country, you
Exactly.
got it. Yeah.
And but I want to go back to that point that you said, for those who are telling you, what's the big deal about it? It's a piece of cloth on your head. It's a symbol for a much bigger issue. As you said, it's the tip of the iceberg. We started the episode talking about FGM. It's not only the hijab. Even a woman's genitalia is being cut, and so no, it's not just a piece of cloth. Just
Yeah.
because anything else
Yeah.
I will say will be inappropriate. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, but I hear where you're going with it, and I 100% agree with you. And thank you for understanding that.
Thank you very much for being here. And before I wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to raise or talk about or draw attention to? You actually answered my last question in the midst of that last
Oh,
talk, but yeah, is there anything you would like to say, or I can even put it that way? What's next after we had this conversation? What's next? Where to?
well, I wanted to mention, because I know you have an Arabic channel as well. So I wanted to tell your listeners that my book is available for free in Arabic from the Richard Dawkins Foundation. So if
Oh,
they go to the Richard Dawkins Foundation website, they can find my book there for free. And if you like, I can send you the link to it directly. So I'm very happy that there are people, because initially my audience, how Western liberals empower radical Islam, my audience was our neighbors and people, friends here in the West, to let them know, kind of to be the whistleblower and to let them know what this religion is really like for the people that are living under it. But I've been very pleased, and I think it might be through my work with Free Hearts, Free Minds, because of course that expands throughout the Muslim majority world. But I've been very pleased and very happy to know that my book is being received, and people in all over the world are feeling like it's resonating with them. Even though I was born and raised in Canada and they're born and raised in Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Sudan or Somalia or whatever, the human experience is so similar. And I just want to say to anybody who is in that point in their life where they're struggling, where they feel like, should I do this? Or, I'm afraid of the consequences that I'm going to have to pay or whatever. I just want to say to them, your freedom is worth it. The happiness that you will get from your freedom is worth whatever backlash comes from it. And I truly believe that. So be safe, be smart, make a plan, be careful, but honestly, man, do whatever it takes to attain your freedom.
reach out for support, try to network, try to find people who will help you out. And I will have all the links. And Yasmin, on that note about the book being available in Arabic for free, I would love to invite you to the Arabic channel and have a completely uh, not different conversation. It's going to be kind of similar conversation, but in a different language for the Arabic audience. And thank you so much for coming here. And yeah, you wanted to
My
say something.
absolute pleasure,
Sorry.
Adam. Well, I was just going to say that it will be a different conversation because I'm not nearly as articulate in Arabic.
We will find a
So I
way.
will we'll find a way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, you have my email, send me a message. We'll definitely make that happen.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. Take care.